All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I am here with David Asarnow. David, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show.
Thanks, Kevin. Great to be here.
Yeah, I have been looking forward to this conversation. And, I got to start off by giving a shout. I don't have to. I want to start off by giving a shout out to Kurt Ludhart. Kurt and his wife, Kristen, man, those two are just such awesome individuals. And they came into my life and I've been getting to know them over, I don't know, probably about the last 8, 9, 10 months or so. And I just totally love who they are and how they show up. And we've been able to do some cool stuff already together. And so when Kurt introduced me to you, I'm just like, anybody that would come into my life through Kurt, that's like an immediate yes. you know and I
You know,
imagine you probably feel the same way.
it's amazing. I just spent several days with him down in Mexico at a mastermind, and he is one rare human. When people talk about service, he lives it,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
he helps without asking for anything in return. He goes above and beyond, and if he even thinks that he can help in any way, offer it before you help. And he's an amazing human, so
Yeah. Yeah.
he deserves that shout out.
You bet. You bet he does. And and of course that right there is such a powerful example and such a powerful testament to this whole thing of right relationships. And that's what this podcast is all about. And yeah, Kurt and Kristen are just, beacons of that. And so what I want to do is I want to turn it over to you and I want to set a little bit of context here for our listeners. So I want you to be able to share about, what it is that you guys do, what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work you're doing and the impact you guys are making in this world. And also give us some of the backstory, because what I do know after hosting this podcast for 3 years, the entrepreneurs we have on this show, they have amazing stories. And you know what? It's through sharing our stories that we just make real meaningful connections with each other. And that's what this is all about and stuff. And so I know that was a lot, but I'm just throwing out a broad net so you can just latch on wherever and just share from your heart, David.
Okay, well, I guess the I'll say what I do yet first.
Okay.
Something happened in the last 2 weeks that answer a question, why do I do what I do?
Uh-huh.
I work with entrepreneurs. I help them build, grow, and scale. I've had two clients that I had conversations with. The funny thing is both of them are named Mark. One's Mark with a C and one's Mark with a K.
Okay.
And something that Mark with a C said to me was, I just want to thank you because my family notices the difference in me. I'm excited in my business again. You're the first person that I've actually implemented exactly what they say, and it worked out exactly how you told me it was going to.
Wow.
And he wanted to thank me for that. And I'm like, I'm just doing what I do. He's like, no, but I wanted you to hear it. And the amazing thing is when I look at why do I do what I do, it's to create those kind of transformations for people. And the thing that feeds me more than anything is when they acknowledge and just say thanks. It's kind of interesting. I don't know what that says about me. Maybe I need to feed my ego, or I don't know I really don't know what it means, except I appreciate when someone says thank you. And I think that's a lesson for all of us to show gratitude when other people help us in whatever we do. The other gentleman, also named Mark, said something to me last week. He said, Dave, I'm more excited about my business because I hear how you get excited about my business and see all these different ways that I never even looked at how I could position myself, how we could build, grow, and scale this and put together a very easy to implement plan that I could never see. And so it's interesting that both of them in the last week said, I get more excited about my business working with you. I don't know if I just get excited, but when I look at things and I can, what I'm really good at I think I'm probably the best at is when someone has a high ticket offer, you've got to position it uniquely and differently. Otherwise, you're just an improvement offer. You're not a new opportunity. And in order to create a new opportunity, you have to look everything from a blue ocean positioning. And maybe I've had the success I've had because I'm really good at choosing which clients I'm going to bring on and who I'm going to work with. And I'm looking specifically for people who have something unique, the way that they serve their clients, the way that they serve the world, the way they serve humanity. Do they have something that can change the world? Now, the reason I like things like that is it's a challenge.
Yeah.
It's hard to sell something new because there's only a certain percentage of the population that's an early adopter. Yet, if you're able to show this is the dream goal desire they have, this is the pain challenge problem that they have, and this is what they want, if we're able to open people's minds up to the possibilities and show them that this product service is what's going to take them to the promised land, to get them well, to change their life, to change their business, that kind of thing excites me. And so that's really what I focus a lot on as a strategist. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've got a company, Business Nitrogen. We've been around for about 15 years. We help people build, grow, and scale. I get to work with some really cool entrepreneurs. I have a whole team that does marketing implementations if people want that. I have a artificial intelligence company where we help people implement, a matrix that is practical AI that actually help them create leverage where there are holes. And all of this growth spawned out of, the 15 years before that. At 40, I stepped down as the president and CEO of the first all digital portrait studio chain that we franchised, grew that to 8 figures in 5 years. Before that, I worked for a company, 50-year-old company that did 68 million in revenue. I started a new division when I was in my late 20s, and we grew that to 45 million in 5 years. And, and so I was a speaker, trainer, and coach for Tony Robbins and Chet Holmes at 40 when I'm like, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? And so I did that for a couple years until Chet passed away. And, since then, by accident, there's no accidents, but I've been doing what I'm doing since then. And so I have fun doing it, transforming businesses' lives. Um, that's really what I'm good at is coming up with ideas to help position companies differently. And then I have a marketing team that can implement. If they just want the strategy, their team can implement. And nowadays, if they want AI, we can implement AI technologies, strategies, and automations to help them do what they need faster.
Okay. Wow. Wow. And I'll tell you, there's definitely no hiding your passion for what you guys do.
Get
So
excited, have fun.
I,
It's
I
all about
totally
having
get it.
fun.
I totally get it because I've been accused of the same exact thing. Yeah. And so what is an example? You don't have to reveal any names or anything like that, but what is an example of a result that you have helped one of your guys' clients get that you're just incredibly proud of?
I've got a lot. Um, I remember one client came to me and he was a big speaker. He still is a big speaker. And when COVID hit, he came to me and he said, I, I I found you and I see that you're up there at the best of, marketing funnels, automation, and high ticket offers. And I said, well, what's your secret sauce? Why are you different than everyone else? That's always ask people, because I need to know what that uniqueness is. And this person said, my revenue is stopped. And they were doing a few $1 million a year. And I said, well, what's your goal? I need to go do something online, but I don't know how. I said, well, what's your goal? $1 million. By when? In a year. So if we get you $1 million in the next year, would you be happy? He said, I'd be ecstatic. That's what I want. Well, we did it in 90 days.
Wow.
Never did anything online before. I've got one of the clients who I've been working with for 15 years. So we've been working together in different forms or fashion. When we started, great vision on changing people's lives, healing the world. And it's funny how the country's gotten about, removing the root cause, but he was a pioneer in this and natural health. And, you know, now he's got a nine-figure business. It was under 1 million when we started.
Okay.
And, I get to see the impact that people like this make. So, do I have one big success story? I have a lot that we stacked, and, some of these people I'm continue to work with. Sometimes we've had a period. Okay, we worked together a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years, and now it's time for them to do something else, and that's all good.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. I can assure you with what you just shared, there's some other people listening to this that perked up, kind of like I just did when you said, well, he wanted 1 million in a year and we did it in a month. And I'm just like, what? And I guarantee you there's already people perking up going, okay, I want to talk to David more. So okay, so now that we've set a little bit of context here, I'm going to switch gears just a little bit, and I'm going to reiterate the question for our listeners here. So, David, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today wouldn't be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
As soon as you said that, I'm thinking of three different people.
Okay,
And you want me to share?
absolutely. I just want you to take it away and share from your heart again.
So it's interesting. I actually thanked this person. We went to lunch at the biohacking conference, and I actually wanted to let them know. I went to lunch with him and his wife, and I just said, I want to let you know how grateful I am that we met. I know, we've been working together for many years. It's because of you. Not only am I so excited and focused in on so many natural health solutions. In fact, he told me, um, 6 months of us working together, he said, you're gonna dominate this space. I can see a day where this is all you focus in on. And it's become a large part of what I do. And it's like that vision. And his name is Dr. Dan Pompa.
Okay.
And he's has a program called Health Centers, where he brings doctors and health coaches in and he trains them. He's got Pompa programs, and you know they've got a very large business these days, about nine figures.
Okay.
And so we did so much together, especially in the beginning. And I'd say the reason that I have to say I'm doing what I'm doing and how we've made such an impact is I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition when I was 20. I had alopecia, I lost pigment in my face, I lost hair, and so it was blotchy. You know what I mean? When you look at it, obviously I'm 56, soon to be 57. I don't have any of that today. I was sitting in his seminar by accident, and it was someone else who knew that I spoke with Tony and Chet, and was like, "Hey, can you help me do what you did?" And I'm speaking at this event, and I said, "Great, let me come watch you. You're in Atlanta. You'll be speaking in Atlanta." So they flew in. I went to the event with them, and I didn't know. All I knew was a doctor's conference. I had no idea what any of it was about. And Dr. Pompa was in the front of the room, and he was talking about how autoimmune happens. And so many times we think it's one thing and it's another. And he was drawing the cell and talking about how hormones work. And then he talked about a bucket and how the bucket overflows. And once the bucket overflows, that's when the autoimmune condition reveals itself, right? So I'm in the back of the room. I'm not a doctor. I'm sitting there taking notes like crazy, and Dr. Pompa comes up to me and introduces himself and says, "I'm Dr. Dan Pompa. What's your name?" And I said, he said, "Where do you practice?" And I said, I'm not a doctor." He's like, "I saw you in the back of the room taking more notes than anyone else, and you're like leaning forward. Why are you so excited about this? What interests you?" And I said, "It's like a game of dominoes. All of a sudden, your whole life is in front of you, and then you hear a piece of information and all the dominoes fall down and everything makes sense. And that's what I heard here.
Wow.
And so not only have I changed my life and my health because of this gentleman, I've got an opportunity to help him build his business and attract practitioners from around the world implementing his programs and protocols. My daughter, I used to bring her to the seminars with me, and she does work in my company in marketing and social media, and yet she's also a health coach because of that. And she went through his training and certification programs just like the doctors. And she was in a car accident where they were hit by a semi, tumbled 3 times. She got a concussion and fractured vertebrae, and she didn't want surgery. She didn't want what the doctor, so she used a lot of these principles to heal herself naturally, and now she gets to transmit. So when you look at how one person and how anyone listening this, you never know the impact of what you have on someone. And that's why it's really important to choose our words wisely and how we communicate with people, how we give people advice, because one little comment could create a movement, and another way we could turn it off and prevent it. So, just his passion and enthusiasm, and even being interested. The funniest thing, this is how this all happened, was he invited me to dinner that evening, and I wasn't able to go because I already had plans. And he said, "Why don't you come back after dinner?" He's like, I looked at him. He said, "Yeah, we've got another speaker speaking, and I think you'd enjoy it." Well, I did come back, and I brought my wife. And then at the end of the night, he gives me a big hug and he said, "Hey, we're teaching business and marketing tomorrow." He said, "I'd love for you to sit in and give us your feedback." And he said, "Because you do this for Tony Robbins." And I said, "Well, in Chet Holmes, it's the business division." And so I looked at my wife. She said, because it was a Saturday. And so I went down and I got there about 20 minutes after it began. And I walk in the room and he actually stops the conference and introduces me as a speaker with Tony Robbins and Chet Holmes. And then shortly thereafter, he actually says, "David, you teach this information, don't you?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Would you mind coming up here and teaching today?" Literally, just like that. So I did for the next hour and a half. I led a marketing training for everyone,
Mhm. Wow.
and
Wow.
we went to lunch on Sunday with our spouses, and had a meeting on Tuesday. And I said, "What's your vision? What would you like to create?" And he told me uh, he'd like to have, 300 practitioners around the world teaching this information, changing people's lives. And today we have well more than 300. And so it's funny. It's like, be careful of what you wish for because you can actually achieve it and then more.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I'm honored that, there's not many companies that you get an opportunity to work with for a decade and a half,
Yeah.
or people, especially it's no contract, it's a handshake agreement.
Yeah.
And so I've had that honor, and I've met some amazing people. In fact, I'm going out next week in Park City and leading a mastermind for his platinum practitioners. It's a business strategy and marketing mastermind.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so
Wow. That's a
I mean, does that answer your question, or do
yeah,
you?
that's a great answer to that question. That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. And you still have two more people that you want to honor and stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have a friend of mine. We've been friends for 33 years.
Okay.
We met when we were both 22 years old. We both went to the University of Florida. I graduated a year ahead of him. I
Okay.
was young for my grade. He was older. But the funniest thing is we met through a network marketing company.
Wow. Wow.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
I thought he was an amazing speaker and how he'd get up in front of the room. And back then I'd get up in front of the room and I'd be shaking.
Uh-huh.
I would, like, nervous. It's like one of the things. It's funny. I was scared to get up in front of the room. I got a C in public speaking, the one course I needed to graduate from college, and yet I'm a speaker these days. It's funny how funny how that happens.
So do you still
And
get nervous when you take the stage now?
no, yes, we always do, but I do it differently. I realize today excitement and nervousness is the exact same feeling. It's how you channel
Ah,
it. So
okay.
I do something different. When I get up, before I go up in front of the room, I either backstage or I literally sit there and I say, God, please give me the words that I need to serve the audience here in front of me. I don't know what I'm going to say, only you do. So may the words enter my mind, hit my heart, and come out of my mouth so the people in this room hear what they need to hear in order to change their lives or their business. I do that.
Awesome.
And then all
That's
of a sudden I
awesome.
walk on stage and it's not on me anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it makes it a heck of a lot easier.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, I'll give a 90-minute training. I don't prep. I never practice what I'm going
Okay.
to say because I don't know what I'm going to say.
Uh-huh.
I know the concepts I'm going to teach,
Mhm.
but the stories are going to change. The information I'm going to change, and it's based upon what's supposed to come out of my mouth. So maybe it's because I take it off of me, it just starts flowing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if people are like, how do you do what you do? And you're just so genuine and natural, like you have everything. And I'm like, it just comes in. It literally, I ask, usually I'll open up, ask a question. And once I know the question I'm going to ask up front, once I ask that question, everything else flows.
Yeah. 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 I can totally, I've had that same experience of, you know, I used to be way more, what's right, trying to be in control of stuff. And once I just kind of like let go, I mean, I had a couple experiences that I was like, oh, you know what? There's no way you could have known anything about that, but look what happened there. And so now it's just kind of caused me to just like let go of a lot of that and just do my thing. And, then I get to co-create and collaborate with God and the universe a little bit too, and
Yeah.
let them do their thing.
I started telling you about my friend. So we met during network marketing and we were playing tennis one day. And he says, hey, Dave, we won't be able to play tennis again for a while. And I said, why? He's like, I'm moving. And I said, where are you moving to? And he said, I'm moving to California. Have you ever heard of a guy named Tony Robbins? And I said, yeah. And so he said, I'm going to be a speaker for him. And he was an amazing speaker even in his 20s, just and he's today amazing as well. And he's transformed the lives of tens of thousands of people through his program, The Ultimate Game of Life. His name's Jim Bunch. And there's a couple things. One, Jim invited me as his guest to a Tony Robbins seminar back when there was, hundreds of people in the room.
Uh-huh.
And so, this is, I was in my early 20s, right?
Uh-huh.
And I thought that that was the coolest thing. And I said, even though I knew I was scared to speak get up in front of a room, I said to myself, one day that will be me. I didn't know I was going to become one of his business division's top closing speakers.
Uh-huh.
But I did, that ended up being many years later after my, uh, working for other people before I decide what I want to do with the rest of my life at 40. But so if I don't think if that conversation, if Jim and I didn't meet, I wouldn't, that was a catalyst of me seeing Tony when I was 22, 23 years old, that I had that vision of what I wanted to eventually become. And when I stepped down as president and CEO of the franchise company that I had built, and the board asked me, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to be a motivational speaker. It just came out of my mouth. I didn't
Uh-huh.
have a plan. I said I'm going to be a motivational speaker. To this day, I'm not a motivational because I was never in Tony's rah rah, pound your chest, jump up and down type of thing. I was in the business growth and strategy. Although people say they get inspired when I'm teaching business and marketing, because I'm passionate about what I share, and so I did become a speaker. And I remember that day thinking it, being in the back of the room or not a back room, in the seminar. And then it literally came out of my mouth when I stepped down and left corporate America for good to be on my own. And I say corporate America because I did build, grow, and scale a company, but I realized I wasn't an entrepreneur. I had ownership in the company, but I reported to a board of directors. I was the president and CEO.
Okay.
And so I knew that it was time for me to make that transition.
Wow. Wow. What a story. Wow. 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 I'm just sitting here with, I've got more questions, but I know you have one more person that you want to talk about and honor. So I want to give you the opportunity to do that first and stuff.
Well, it's interesting. I was 40 years old, and most people would be scared to leave what they're doing
Yeah,
at 40 and put
totally.
all their chips on the table. And by the way, be scared to lose everything.
Yeah.
And I have a TED Talk that talks about that. I was literally 30 days from losing everything. I was all the way up here, went all the way down here, and then had to get back up again. And the inspiration and belief that I could do this came from my grandfather,
Okay.
who last Thursday would have been 103 years old.
Wow. Wow.
And he's no longer with us. He passed away at 74. When I was 3 years old, he and my grandmother sold everything, sold their house, sold their cars, and they invested in this small little business down in Tampa, Florida.
Okay.
It was an orthotics. They did braces, back braces, knee braces. He ended up going into prosthetics with his artificial limbs. When I was 4 years old, my grandmother flew up, picked me up, and brought me down with them for 2 months. And so I was, he used to bring me around at 4, 5, 6 years old, what he called detailing doctors, which were cold calling on doctors, knocking on doors. I didn't realize now that I think about it, it's probably good eye candy to allow, they're never going to be mean to him and rude to him when you've got a 4-year-old along with you on a sales call. But I grew up every summer, every vacation, going from my house in New Jersey to my grandparents. And when my brother and sister were old enough to come down as well, they would stay home with my grandmother and they would go to the beach and do everything. And I'd go to work with my grandfather. So I always just wanted to be with my grandfather because he did. I remember it. I cleaned bathrooms. I cleaned wheelchairs because he did home health care. I'd go on hospital bed deliveries with the drivers, and I do anything, right? Um, the reason I tell you this story is my grandfather did that at 50 years old, and I knew him from 50 to 74, right? Or actually from 47 to 74. And although I don't remember much before 3 years old. And the interesting thing I can share is that was the inspiration I can share. I said, well, my grandfather did that, and look what I've done up until 40. Imagine what I'm going to create. And then I use that exact same story when I turned 50. Wow, look what I've done in 10 years.
Yeah.
I can't only imagine what kind of impact I'm going to be able to make over the next 15 to 20 years
Yeah.
because I saw what happened in such a short period of time. And so that's where I have to honor my grandfather for that.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. What? What an inspirational story that is right there, and what some power, just what powerful context that is from you having witnessed that and seen that and experienced that and been a part of it to be able to now, because we always get to tell ourselves whatever story we want, and a lot of people tell themselves stories that are not very self-serving at all. And I've been guilty of this, man. I mean, I can be my own worst critic sometimes, so, but that story right there of just, watching your grandpa and what he accomplished and stuff, and you get to like parlay that over into like, wow, look, what might I be able to accomplish, and just having that experience. And I'll be 60 years old this month. On the 26th, I'll be
Happy
60.
birthday.
And I feel at 60 years old, David, I'm just now really starting to figure stuff out. I'm just really catching my flow now.
Yeah.
And I was in a conversation yesterday, and I told the guy I said I was talking to, I said, you know what? I can assure you, my biggest impact is still in front of me. It is totally in front of me. It's not behind me. I've some pretty cool stuff's happened, but it is definitely in front of me.
I
And
second
to
that.
just know that and just have so much conviction around it. And I fully expect that. And and it's like, yeah, you get pretty doggone jazzed about what you're doing when you look at it that way. And that self-talk that we have, man, that is so, so important. And it can be just as detrimental too if we go the other way with it.
Oh, what you feed yourself and what you think and how you talk is the most important thing.
Yeah, yeah,
This, this
yeah,
is the 6 inches or 8 inches between here,
yeah.
the most important thing.
Absolutely.
And who
Absolutely.
we surround ourselves with and who we take advice from is very important too.
You bet. You bet it is. Yeah. I mean, I have long believed that, as entrepreneurs, relationships are our most valuable. I mean, you look at the examples you just shared of, your friend Jim going into Tony's world and stuff and just kind of brought you along into that world. And if you didn't know Jim, that probably wouldn't have happened. It's kind of like what I said at the beginning of this interview. If you and I didn't both know Kurt, we probably never would have got connected and stuff. But I'm
Exactly.
pretty doggone great. I mean, I was already really grateful that I knew Kurt, and now that I got to meet you through Kurt, I'm pretty grateful for that too.
Well,
And
likewise.
and so I just kind of want to point this out because this is really powerful. And of course, this is what this podcast is all about. This trail of relationships and stuff, and how impactful they are for us. And my goal with this podcast is it's been the same since I launched this. For you, the guest, I want to give you the opportunity to, share your stories and your experience around this topic of relationships and be able to honor some people that have been such an impact on your life and your business. But on the other side, for our listeners, who are also entrepreneurs, founders, and CEOs, I just want to inspire them to place an intentional focus on creating more real, meaningful, rewarding, and profitable relationships in their own lives. And with your help today, David, we totally delivered on that. And I just want to thank you for that. I'm just so incredibly grateful for that. And um, for anybody else listening to this, like thinking to themselves, man, Kev, I'm with you. I really like David. I love how David shows up, and some of the stuff he shared has got me thinking, like, man, it might be good to talk with him because they might be able to help us. And so, for anybody who's thinking like that, I mean, any websites, any resources we can share with them?
Sure. You can reach me at davidasarnow.com,
Okay,
and you can go to businessnitrogen.com or on Instagram, real David Asarnow.
not the fake one, the real one.
The real one, real. Yes.
I
I
love it.
actually think that I got when it first came out David Asarnow, but I forgot the login. So it's like never been used, but I can't get access to it. So I
Oh, God.
went with real. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Interesting.
Things happen.
Stuff happens. I heard a story about some guy who had invested in Bitcoin like years ago and lost his login or something like that. And now his Bitcoin is worth so doggone much and they can't even access it. And so
Yeah, that
so
happened.
your Instagram thing is like you're okay, man.
It's all good.
It's all perspective, isn't it?
Exactly.
Well, any last thing you feel led to share, David, before we call it a wrap?
Since the whole conversation is, I'd encourage everyone, think about some people that have made an impact in your life and reach out and just thank them.
Yeah,
I just thought of someone else. We won't go there now, but I've actually done this to this person. They're the ones who gave me the opportunity to start that new division for the company. And I reached back out because I was in my 20s. I'd never led anything before. And he gave me that opportunity and sold the owners of the company and giving me that opportunity. Yes, the last in year 5, I put $9.2 million to the company's bottom line. And yet I'm grateful because that opportunity gave me the belief of taking that next step and the interview that I had to start a next company. So when you think about it, everyone has an opportunity. There's so many people that have made an impact in your life. Pick up the phone, thank them for that. You'll be amazed how grateful they are that you even remember them for that.
That's right. 100%. 100%. This whole thing of just being actively and genuinely appreciative of other people and letting them know that, because there's not a person on the face of this earth that gets too much appreciation,
Yeah.
and we just do that and show up that way, and man, it's just gonna open so many conversations, and it's just, yeah, it's just, and it's a good way to show up. So, well, David, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. Really appreciate you, and I'm stoked to get this out there. So thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Thanks, Kevin.
You bet.